Welcome to episode 9.
Yes, welcome. My name's Katie.
And I'm Garrett.
And a big ol' thank you to Lauren Perrin, our Patreon of the week. Thank you so much for subscribing. We love your emails. Yeah, thanks. And if you want a shout out of your own, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/thebarisAnkleHigh. Today, or do you have anything before we get into it?
I think we should thank everybody so much. This is our first episode that we've recorded since our premiere, and our episodes have been coming out. So we've just gotten so much great feedback, and everybody's been amazing and very tender to these tenderonies. We appreciate it.
Your threats have worked. People have been very nice.
Weird when you ask for kindness in a threatening way. It sometimes works. Oh my god. So yes, thank you for your support. We appreciate it so much. It's been so fun, and I'm so glad that everybody's seems to really be like loving it as much as we're loving recording them. So can't ask for a better.
And I also love everybody that responds to the weekly guess the next name of the episode.
My favorite
polls that I post. It's my favorite too, but I really love seeing all the responses and how the choices get distributed. It's fun. And also, if you guess right, you'll be entered to win a sticker.
Yeah.
So keep playing that game because it's fun, first of all.
And I always get them wrong. I've never once gotten it right.
I don't tell Garrett the name. I name the episodes, and I don't tell Garrett the name of the episodes before they get posted. So Garrett gets to play in real time with you guys.
And I get them wrong every time. 100%. I don't think I've ever gotten it right. Doing really well.
It'll happen someday.
Accidentally.
Probably when I accidentally rename an episode something that I've already used.
If there is another episode about tortellini.
I mean, I feel like we could call this Tortellini Filled with Knives Part 2, frankly, with this topic
that's
today.
True. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, what are we talking about today, Katie?
We're talking about rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Sorry. That was
not delicious.
That wasn't a good noise. I regret it. Not editing it out, but I regret it. Sorry, guys.
It is so according to Attitude Magazine, it's defined as an extreme emotional sensitivity and pain triggered by the perception that a person has been rejected or criticized by important people in their life. It can also be triggered by a sense of failing to meet their own high standards or others' expectations of them. Yes. And it's experienced by almost 100% of those with ADHD, which I was surprised by.
Yeah, I saw the same statistic, and I have the same quote at the top of my document. I did see something where they described rejection RSD as the most common or a very common manifestation of emotional dysregulation, which was kind of helpful for me because I'm reading it and I'm thinking it was sounding very similar, but describing it that way, it made more sense to me. So if you haven't listened to the Tortellini Filled with Knives episode about emotional dysregulation, go check that out. And these are also under this umbrella of emotional dysregulation. They're not official symptoms of ADHD.
Yes.
So you may not find it with a cursory Google.
Yes, RSD is not a formal diagnosis, but it is one of the most common and disruptive manifestations of emotional dysregulation, is what I had written down. Also, episode 4, a Tortellini Filled with Knives, discusses emotional dysregulation. And what we discussed in that episode, just a refresher for those of you who have obviously already listened.
Because, I mean, you wouldn't be at episode 9 if you hadn't.
Emotional dysregulation is the result of an overstimulated amygdala response that incites an extreme shame feeling when ADHDers experience rejection, criticism, or failure, making these normal life experiences, quote, unbearable, restricting, and highly impairing.
Yes, like one thing I saw was that those triggers, with dysregulation and this RSD, they're emotions that everybody feels at some point. These are like human nature emotions. It has to do with the intensity and how long it takes to dissipate. I think those are like the two, there's a word I'm looking for that's escaping me, distinguishing factors
Yes.
with these.
Yeah, and dysphoria, for those who don't know, is the Greek word for, quote, difficult to bear, which I think is
My nickname for myself. Difficult to bear.
it's something to keep in mind as part, like, it's very easy to focus on just the first two words, rejection sensitivity, but the crux of it is that the rejection sensitivity is difficult to bear. And I think that, for me, helped explain a lot, especially when one of our sources said, what can cause it? And there's like rejection, whether like real or perceived, teasing, criticism, even if it's constructive, and then persistent self-criticism or negative self-talk prompted by real or perceived failure. And I am like the most guilty of that, for sure. And it almost goes back to when we were talking about poor time management, where I said I've like billed it as my perfectionism over the years, and it's not actually perfectionism, it's just poor time management. But I also think that the reason that I think of it as perfectionism is because of that negative self-talk, where if I'm not meeting a deadline or I'm not doing something in the right, quote unquote, right time, then it's that perceived failure that is then triggering the RSD. And so like, it's of course all connected, like this cursed Venn diagram of symptoms.
It just starts that vortex. I know when I was reading, I have this broken down to like what it's like. And I'm pulling together all these different like points that I saw. I would say one of the ones that I'm definitely guilty of is setting like impossible expectations for myself. Setting the bar like the opposite of ankle high, sky high, and just not meeting it, and then getting into this like loop of being like, see, you're so bad at this, and if you weren't so this, you'd be better at it.
Totally.
And look at all these other people doing it and you can't do it.
Yeah.
It starts a nice little anxiety spiral.
Yes.
That's really hard to get out of.
It's so hard to get out of. And what I related it to was like my experiences in like high school math, especially, because it did not matter. And it's very possible that like I might have like a touch of dyscalculia. But I could not get math. Like I could fully follow when my tutor or my math teacher was explaining something to me and we went through step by step. I'm like, yes, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. Okay, great. Here's a problem for you to do on your own. And it's no shit, like a carbon copy of the problem we just did together with different numbers.
Yeah.
And I completely lost it. Like, and I would get so frustrated with myself for feeling that feeling of failure. Like I'm not meeting that expectation, real or perceived. And I would get so frustrated that I could almost like I would get teary. Like I wouldn't ever like fully break down in public.
Right.
But I would for sure feel like I was about to cry because I felt so much shame and rejection and like not that my teachers ever made me feel stupid. My tutor certainly didn't, but I just could not get it. And it was this thing of like, it fully made up standards.
Right.
But that feeling of rejection and you'll never be successful, you'll never amount to anything, you just can't do it, you're a loser.
If you can't do this math, like what are you gonna be able to do?
Right. And it's that thing of like, this was just explained to you, like how can you be this dumb?
Right.
And it's horrible.
I think definitely math class, I think mine was more being very easily embarrassed. So I've also been somebody who blushes, and I cannot tell you I was describing this like in my notes, and as I'm reading through this dysregulation and they're talking about these intense feelings and with the emotional dysregulation, the feeling like the pain that they're talking about, I would feel like my body was on fire. That's the only way I can describe it. Like my face was inflamed. I was embarrassed. It would make me flustered. And then people would really just push me over the embarrassment shame cliff by saying that my face was really red.
Because it comes across as like a criticism or teasing.
And like pointing something out that I can physically feel it. Mm-hmm. So I really don't need you to tell me that my face is red. I can feel it is. And then I'm embarrassed because my face is red. So even whatever the original issue was, I'm embarrassed about. Now my embarrassment is showing in my face and my face is red. And it's not even always that I'm embarrassed. Sometimes my face is red because I get really excited about something or something's really funny, or it's not even always like a shameful thing, but that physical emotional reaction being like visible for people is the worst. Mm-hmm. So it's like, then I'm embarrassed because you can see that my face is red and I know you can see it and you know that I know that you can see it. And when you point it out, then we're just, you might as well just put me to bed. The day is done. I want to just die. So yeah, that easily embarrassed, feeling ashamed, the impossible expectations. And the other thing that I thought really was accurate for me was the equating like disappointment with like utter failure.
Yeah.
Like if I disappointed a teacher, I was a bad student, I was bad at school, I was dumb, just like the domino effect.
Yes. And another callback to episode 6, I think that especially as women, and as we discussed in episode 6, AFAB individuals generally as children are taught to not really display your emotions, to be, do what you can to be smaller, make yourself smaller.
Quiet.
So rage, frustration, anger, depression were all very internalized feelings. And as adults, adults everywhere, neurotypical or not, are, part of growing up is that you do internalize your feelings. You don't have those external outbursts to things as often.
Which is so much more common in cisgender women.
Yeah.
Whereas cisgender men are much more likely to externalize those intense feelings.
Correct. And I thought it was interesting, since we read the same article, that they kept calling it a pain. Because that's how I feel it, is that I really do feel like the center of my chest is being stabbed when I get that feeling of like I failed.
I feel it like in my stomach getting tight and like my skin is on fire. Also, spicy armpits is also a side effect of that.
Yeah, I feel it. It is like I can't take a deep breath. There's a knife in the middle of my chest. But that, again, goes back to our brains can't tell the difference between physical pain and perceived pain, or emotional pain. So because we have those beefed up...
Oh my God. If you haven't listened to our Patreon episode, the side conversation about beefing, you better throw us your
subscribe.
$5 and subscribe and get your sticker, because...
But we have those beefed up amygdalas that are already working overtime, so they're already primed to do that fight or flight thing.
That hypersensitive reaction.
Correct. Yeah. So then when we have that pain feeling that everybody feels, like you can feel rejection as a neurotypical person and be disappointed that you didn't meet somebody's expectation of you, or you didn't meet the expectation you had for yourself. If you thought that, a home project was going to look a certain way when you finished it and it didn't.
Or that you should get 100% on everything that you ever submit your whole life.
Right.
Like that.
It's totally normal to be disappointed that you don't do that.
Right.
But the folks with ADHD who suffer with RSD...
Also people who have autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah, anybody who's neurodivergent, I'd say probably who has this. The article said the pain is reported as being, quote, intense, awful, terrible, and overwhelming, and is always triggered by the perceived or real loss of approval, love, or respect, unquote. And I said, can relate.
Yes, I also had that little quote in my notes, because that was very accurate. I mean, and I think ultimately it resulted in me not putting myself out there for a lot of things, because it's like, if it's a scale, my ability to weather embarrassment was always very small, just very self-conscious, very like hyper aware of myself. I know like my anxiety probably got bad when I started high school. I switched schools. I went from being in the same tiny little class to a public school. It wasn't a big school, but still a big change and not knowing anybody. And I think it made me hyper aware of, not that I wasn't awkward, because boy, I was still real awkward. But especially like in a classroom setting, like so much of my anxiety was surrounded around like answering something wrong in class, or the worst thing on the planet, getting called to go up and do math on the board. That's a death sentence, like straight to jail. If you are telling a child to do that, I can't think, as a kid, couldn't think of anything worse. Reading out loud, another one, if I fucked up. And then
Oh, I never had a problem with reading out loud, but I would do that thing where I like counted ahead, because like we go around the room and everybody reads a paragraph or something. And so I'd count ahead to see when my paragraph would start.
Yep. And then miss your cue because you were counting when you were supposed to start.
Yeah.
And then getting embarrassed because you missed your cue and you weren't paying attention. And why isn't my attention span better?
Yeah. But the same article did note that anxiety thing, and how ADHD is often, especially if you haven't been diagnosed in childhood, is often misdiagnosed as super socially anxious.
Which is what I thought I had when I was a teenager and my anxiety got really bad.
Right.
I read about social anxiety in a textbook. I was doing AP Psych. That's what it was. And I read about it and I was like, oh my God, I experience all of these things. That's all these things that I'm experiencing is this.
Right. Because we're so prone to anticipating rejection and behaving / masking in a way to avoid that rejection at any means necessary. I said, my two examples were story about Garrett's penchant for planning, and the reason for it is to consider possible outcomes, and then / working backwards on the clock, like you do. And then I said, I will doom spiral so fucking fast and stay in the river Styx of doom self-loathing if I don't catch myself.
I don't have anxiety. What are you talking about? Oh my God. Yeah, it's I do see it like still as an adult. One quote that I did see, they had an article that was just people talking about their experience with with RSD. And the one that really struck a chord with me, they said every single time they feel this is like the first time you got rejected as a child. And I was like, oh, that's exactly it. It's like feeling it now when I have something that triggers that like loop of feelings, or something that really sparks this like dysregulation, dysphoria situation. It makes me feel like I
wonder why it
13.
is like the wound never heals.
Right.
So then every time that happens again, it's just ripping that scab off and jamming a fork into it.
Or salt.
Yeah.
There's some kind of object going into that old
hole?
Yeah.
Old beef hole.
Just gonna zip that back. No one needs to hear that. But you know what? We're probably not gonna edit that out either.
Nah, because I said beef hole.
Beef hole. But yes, I definitely like that makes me feel like I'm an awkward middle schooler or high schooler all over again when I feel that.
Yeah.
That inflamed feeling on my face. Ooh, it still happens to me sometimes, like, or if I'm trying to like think quickly, or really anything that's like sudden, a lot of times my face will flush. And when people, even now when people point it out, I just want to be like, are you serious? I know it's red.
What really gets me now and will push me right over into the rage reaction category, internally anyway,
Aside from being woken up from a nap,
is if somebody is pointing something out to me in a public way in order to make an example of me, or whatever, feel like a big person themselves. That will, like, I won't carry it with me in the sense that I will feel shame and pain in that moment, but I will also get so angry because in my mind, there's no reason to treat another person like that. So I take that as like an emotional injury, because I cannot understand why you would go out of your way to treat somebody like that. When, like, I'm not a bad person. So, like, anything that I've done doesn't deserve that kind of treatment. And I think, like, we'll discuss it later when we get to that study that I looked at. But, yeah, it's just wild. And I saw that One of the articles I read noted that people with RSD either become chronic people pleasers or become extremely apathetic and stop trying altogether.
And avoid anything they can that's going to trigger those, which I definitely
I can do both.
Yeah, I know I probably got through a lot of the times where I felt it the most by just avoiding it. Avoiding situations, not participating in things, opting out because I didn't want to be embarrassed.
I think everybody gets one chance.
And then straight to jail.
Yeah, but then if you hurt me, then you will not get another chance, and I will do full apathy, complete avoidance, do whatever I can to, and then if I still have to deal with that person professionally speaking, or even personally, it's very surface level, very like
a neutral civil.
Yeah, like these are the bullet
business.
points of why I'm talking to you, and then I'm not going to sit
Right.
around here and like shoot the shit with you and pretend to be friends, because anything you say, I don't give a shit about anymore. Which brings me to my next source, Psychology Today.
Oh, I was on there too. I think I was reading an article. Yes, I did. I just had to check my sources. I was reading a thing on.
Where the article I read said that people with RSD struggle with holding grudges.
Yes,
because
like
it's
when
the
we were talking
emotional
about
response.
yes, the rumination.
Yes.
That we were talking about with emotional dysregulation, like 100%, like definitely holding on to something for too long.
Some more symptoms, though, that were noted in that Psychology Today article I read were, just for you, listener, if you're not sure if this is you, struggle with low self-worth or self-esteem, you're easily embarrassed or ashamed, quick to anger or blow up when perceiving rejection or getting hurt by somebody. You set expectations that are high or difficult to meet, and I put for themselves, because it wasn't specified in the article.
But I feel like probably also for people in your life. I mean, if you're setting the bar so high and people are constantly not meeting your absurdly high expectation, like you're setting everybody up for failure.
Yes.
And they talk a lot with RSD and emotional dysregulation about the impact that that's going to have on your interpersonal relationships. And that's a prime example. If these expectations are like totally out of whack, constantly going to cause conflict and problems with people around you.
And I think, especially when I was younger, this manifested as me over apologizing in a lot of my relationships. And I remember being called out by like multiple guys that I've dated saying like, you've just got to stop saying you're sorry all the time. Like it's not, and it was almost as if it was a crutch in speech, the way I often say like or it was, oh, sorry, I'm in your way. Sorry, I put that down where you were going to sit. Sorry. You don't have to apologize for that. And to me, it wasn't a apology.
It was like a reflex.
Right.
Yeah.
But also this list of symptoms included sees themselves as a failure when they disappoint others, may consider or engage in self-harming behaviors, and over-anticipate rejection in new situations, which can be exacerbated. All of those symptoms can be exacerbated by frequent social media use, because it's so easy to not only compare yourself to the people in your life that are posting stuff on social media, but also strangers who are on social media as influencers, specifically cultivating an aesthetic image just for social media.
And somebody liking, like that engagement that you're getting from people is causing a dopamine reaction in your brain. So of course, it really is a recipe for true disaster when you combine it with something like this, which is a very underdiagnosed. ADHD is still underdiagnosed. Goes back to the conversations we've had about it's probably a spectrum, more like autism spectrum disorder, or on the same spectrum. You think about the number of people that are impacted by this and the frequency of social media use, and yikes.
Yeah.
That sucks. Sure. And I mean, I can feel it if I'm on too much. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. And
I think not a good color on me.
We were lucky in the sense that we grew up with social media grew up with us.
Yes, yeah.
So we had our childhoods without social media, without there's comparison at school with, and other people who lived in your neighborhood. but it wasn't, I'm comparing myself to somebody who lives in LA and I'm comparing myself to somebody whose parents, you know, their household income is $750,000 a year
Right.
and mine is 80.
Right.
So, and now that's so easy to do, and you don't know what other people are making. You know, they make
It's
it
much
seem
more
like
subversive.
it is,
Yeah,
because it's
for
like,
sure.
oh, they're just getting a flannel off of Amazon. Like, oh, look, they linked it. This flannel's only $20. Like, okay, sure, but that's not the only thing that they own, and they're filming this in this cavernous living room that normal people don't have.
$1,000 piece of equipment, and
Yeah.
I mean the list just, and filters on everything, and
Yes.
it really very much distorts things. If you have not watched, God, now I can't remember the name of the documentary. There was a Netflix documentary about social media,
Oh,
The Social Dilemma.
yes,
Maybe,
yeah, Social
which
Dilemma.
it should be like required watching for people.
Yeah.
because it's like if you spend 6 hours on social media a week, you're gonna have to watch this, or however many hours, you know. It's very good watching, and it really made me kind of think twice about the fact that how long my eyes are sitting on something and how fast my scroll is data that's being reported, which makes me want to barf on myself. So speaking of emotional dysregulation, and one thing on that list of symptoms with the low self-esteem was linked to that also your sense of self-worth being dependent on what other people think of you, which is another real slippery slope.
It's dangerous, yeah. Yes. And it's not again, very subversive, very insidious. It's not something that you notice until you're halfway down that hill.
Right. Right.
And yeah, I mean, you know, you don't have to go to therapy every other week, guys. You know, just do like a quarterly check-in.
Yep.
And just touch base with somebody to be like, yeah, you know, this is how I'm feeling, and I'm not sure if that's normal. And maybe you go for more frequently for a little bit, and then you back off. I'm kind of at that point, I think, with my therapy, is that I'm going less frequently because things are evening out for now.
Yeah, it's cyclical. I mean, there's times where, you know, if I have more going on, I'm feeling more overwhelmed seasonally. I probably go more in the wintertime, because when that vitamin D intake drops off a cliff and I get real grumpy all the time, I wind up in therapy more often. Weird.
So yeah, I don't know if I had heard it separately or if I managed to like see it mentioned once in one of the articles I was reading, but justice sensitivity is similar to RSD. But
is this also under the emotional dysregulation umbrella?
I think so.
Okay.
Justice sensitivity is the tendency to notice and identify wrongdoing and injustice and have intense cognitive, emotional, and behavioral reactions to that injustice.
Oh, no. Not again. Not again. Shit.
Who, me? As for me.
Oh, no. I've been attacked again.
People who are justice sensitive tend to notice injustice more often than others. They tend to ruminate longer and more intensely on that injustice, and they feel a stronger need to restore justice.
Oh, no. Oh, no. I feel like, was it Mr. Bill in the SNL skits? Oh, no. And then he gets, like, run over by a car. Yeah, that's me right now.
Fun fact, I used to think that Mr. Poopy Butthole from Rick and Morty was the same as Mr. Bill.
Oh, gee, I don't know, Rick.
Hey, Mr. Poopy Butthole.
That is a really unfortunate mix-up.
Like most things in my life, yes.
Yes. Mr. Also, if you haven't watched Rick and Morty.
Oh, man, you guys gotta watch Rick and Morty. Also, Solar Opposites is pretty good.
I haven't seen Solar Opposites. I'm going to say something that sounds dramatic, but since we're talking about RSD, it works. And this is a side quest, Rick and Morty has, for sure, without a doubt, completely shifted my worldview. Like, my view of life, my view of afterlife, of...
Is that why you did the bathroom remodel? Because you were inspired by Rick's toilet?
I need an intergalactic toilet. is what I'm
With
saying.
lasers and screaming at people who try
I
to use
just need. If I could only get this. Yeah, it has. I would say before I was probably like, I was agnostic before that. I feel like Rick and Morty has probably turned me into an atheist. You know what really did it was the micro universe episode. So Rick created a micro universe that was solely designed for generating power for his car. Instead of gasoline, he used this tiny universe that he created. And then he goes and visits the microverse, and he is like a god because he's their creator.
Right.
Then he finds out that that miniverse is being powered by another miniverse that this guy, this other guy in the miniverse created. So it's just like this trickle down effect. And there's a moment where the miniverse of the miniverse that's generating everybody realizes that that's what they're doing. And the one character says that he missed his father's funeral because he had to work and they wouldn't let him miss work. And he crashes his little spaceship into the side of a cliff. So I took you down that nice little uplifting.
It's inspired, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
So is this how the Pope Mobile is fueled? Is that what I'm hearing?
Definitely, without a doubt.
That makes
It
sense.
definitely subsists on a tiny verse of, or teeny verse. I don't remember what their name for it was. Miniverse. I feel like it was teeny verse. I don't know. Probably subsisting on souls.
I mean, the Pope Mobile is powered by a Weenie-verse for sure.
Definitely.
But, you know,
Just full of
I can say that as a lapsed Catholic, so.
Yeah. I went to Catholic school, so I was never confirmed. I was never officially part of the church, but...
I had to be confirmed as part of my parents' divorce agreement.
What? What?
Fun fact, right? Yeah.
You're like 16 at that point.
Yeah. I mean, the divorce, their agreement covered child support until I was 18, so.
That's nuts. Man.
Yeah, part of they also had their marriage annulled, which was wild.
After having 2 children, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
pissed
something.
off my mom to no end that
Yeah.
my dad went for that. But his parents, my grandparents, really wanted my dad to be able to remarry in the church. It was really important to them.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they made a obscene donation to the church in addition to get the annulment. But in any event, yeah, so they had annulment, but part of their divorce agreement was that my brother and I would be raised Catholic and confirmed in the Catholic Church. So once we were confirmed, we could do it. We didn't have to go to church anymore.
So that was the only sacrament they were concerned about?
Well, I'm sure that they were concerned about others, but they weren't about to force children to be betrothed to other Catholics.
They were like, that's written on the back in invisible ink, actually.
Yeah, it's like the national treasure is just my parents' divorce agreement.
Katie with a candle, like, trying to read what else she's supposed to be doing as an adult. Wait a minute, am I supposed to be... Fuck.
Yeah, no, we had to get confirmed. So, yeah, I had my first communion. I mean, my mom was raised Catholic anyway, so
Yeah.
it wasn't like...
Right, it's not like it was a real
Ridiculous,
stretch, but,
yeah.
like, that's just a real intense...
But also when my mom was confirmed, she got slapped in the face by the bishop because that was part of your confirmation to learn to turn
Absolutely
the other
not.
cheek.
Absolutely not.
Swear
Absolutely
to God.
not. Right to jail. That is not...
Slapped every child and you all lined up and you got slapped in the face by the bishop.
That's... No.
Because you had to learn how to turn the other cheek like Jesus. Evidently.
Somebody must have punched that bitch right in the face. Somebody had to have gone at the bishop and punched him closed fist.
Apparently, so because also they were all dressed in robes. Like
Children?
like yeah, like
Form.
kind of like altar children.
Yeah. Sacrificial children dressed in robes getting slapped in the face by a grown man. Oh my God.
I mean, it was an open hand. It wasn't a
can't.
punch.
This is
But
too
yeah,
much.
apparently my grandfather, my mom's dad, told, because it'd be weird if it was my dad's dad told my mom.
That would be
but-
weird when she was a child, yeah.
Yeah, so my mom's dad, I guess, told her
Cursed
she
Back
was
to the
a
Future.
giant fighting tomboy.
Yeah.
That basically, like, if you swing on the bishop, you will never sit down again. Like, I'll tan your hide, basically.
This is not getting better. This is not
So she's
getting
in the robe, and she said she got slapped, and like she had to like clench her fists for the rest of the ceremony because she was so mad.
So my confirmation story that I will share, I was not confirmed, but I have a friend that got in trouble in confirmation classes because the confirmation name that they selected was Jesus. And it turns out they don't want you to use that.
I thought you had to pick a saint, and he's not a saint. I picked Joan because I like Joan of Arc's story. Yeah. But I didn't like how it sounded with the rest of my name because it's supposed to be like first name, middle name, confirmation name.
Yeah.
So it would be Catherine Elizabeth Joan, and I didn't like that.
Yeah, it makes you sound like a boomer, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Elizabeth Joan is my alter identity. Also, new Princess of Wales is also named Catherine Elizabeth, so...
Oh, that's interesting.
Eat my beef.
She just can't. There's a hyperfixation on the beef now.
It is. It's going to be on a t-shirt someday.
You're going to get a lot of beef in the rest of this episode, and probably episodes to come, to be honest. And you're going to have to listen to Patreon to find out what type of beefing we're referring to.
Yeah.
Hint, hint. I shouldn't have said hint, hint after that, but I mean, at this point,
hint. Join Patreon, I guess, is the hint. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
So, yeah, justice sensitivity is the tendency to notice and identify wrongdoing.
Like slapping children in the face.
Like slapping children in the face to prove that they love God. And
or as Katie would pronounce it, probably Jod.
Also on Patreon.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot that was on Patreon. Whoops.
Go. But the very first study on ADHD and justice sensitivity, based on what I was found, was done in 2015. So super recently.
Yeah, I read that it was added to, like, the EU added rejection sensitivity and, like, emotional dysregulation as ADHD symptoms like 5 years ago. The US still has not done it.
Tracks.
But the EU did it like 5 years ago.
We don't even have healthcare, so.
Yeah. It's all very recent.
Yeah.
And when I was diagnosed 6 years ago, like, none of this information was out there for adults. So.
I meant to ask this earlier, were you diagnosed with anxiety before you were diagnosed with ADHD?
Yes. I was experiencing, I thought something, like, physically was wrong with me because I was experiencing, like, crazy nausea every day. Like, mouth-watering, like, looking for a trash can sitting in class.
Horrible.
So I eventually, like, went to the doctor. And, of course, they do, like, the physical workup. And they were like, okay, nothing's wrong with you physically. So I started taking AP psychology and realized, oh, the social anxiety sounds really close. I asked my mom about going to see somebody. And I had a very specific, because I was then, like, got so into it.
Hyperfixating, you might say?
Yeah, weird. I wanted to see a cognitive behavioral therapist and, like, work on my anxiety from a non-pharmaceutical perspective because my attitude was, like, this is something I'll have for my whole life. Like, I need tools to be able to deal with it. So I started seeing, like, a social worker who tried to do a lot of mindfulness with me, which...
I thought you were going to say mind control.
I don't know. She put this big helmet on me, and then...
She stared into my eyes. I wasn't allowed to blink.
She had this little watch that had a twirly on it. It was very weird. She tried a lot of mindfulness. It's something that has been on my radar that I should work on, but have never really had the attention span for. So it's a work in progress. She tried that with me a lot. There were some things that I used, but it was probably another 10 years before I was diagnosed with ADHD.
Okay.
And I started seeing, I saw that therapist for a while. You know, it's how therapy is. Like, you go for a little bit and then you improve and things level off, so you stop going. And then I didn't want to go back to her, so I wound up trying to find, like, one or two others and, like, not having a lot of success. Finding somebody that's accepting patients is always a hard thing. So I saw a different therapist who, within an hour, I was explaining why I thought I had ADHD, and she was like, like, we've crossed that bridge. We know what's happening now. It's very clear. And I did medicate for a while. I did do Adderall for a bit. And I just found that it wasn't on a daily basis. I felt like something that I needed. It was something that I needed incidentally. Mm-hmm. I think that being undiagnosed for so long, I developed a lot of good tools, so I am able to use those to get me through on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And things for like exams and when I really need to be like sitting and truly deeply focusing and not being interrupted and goldfishing it, then I need to be medicated for sure. And my anxiety probably does also need to be medicated, but it's not right now. Still doing it, guys. Still raw dogging it.
Which isn't unheard of. I mean, I certainly am more familiar with hearing about kind of like triage care for anxiety, where, you know, somebody might have a standing prescription for Xanax or something,
Right.
where it's like, okay, I know that I cannot get on a plane.
Right.
So, like, I'll take this 2 hours before I'm supposed to get on my flight.
Right.
And it'll mellow me out so
Which
I
I
can
have
just
done.
chill.
And
right.
yes, it does. But it also makes me feel like I couldn't emote if I wanted to, which is also scary.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think, or like somebody
Which is,
that's
I guess,
feeling-
helpful if the plane crashes, then
Yeah.
you're not going to be bothered.
Yeah, which I would need in the case of a plane crash. Or punch me in the face, be the bishop, and just knock me out, please. And I think that I had a thought. I forgot it.
There it goes.
Yep.
Right out the window.
Just like a butterfly. Bye.
So yeah, so this study was from 2015, which was the paper that I found about the study is called "The Kind Nature Behind the Unsocial Semblance, ADHD and Justice Sensitivity, a Pilot Study," where they conducted an empirical pilot study in which people with ADHD and what they called healthy controls, which was wildly offensive. I don't know why they didn't just call them neurotypicals.
Yeah,
but
thanks. Thanks a lot, guys.
were confronted with different forms of social injustice in a game situation.
Oof.
So,
Somebody's about to get way too competitive. Way too into it.
not me at all. Just
Definitely not either of us getting over the top with something.
God, don't ask my boyfriend about it.
Whatever you do, don't mention it to anybody I've played a game with before. The list is short.
Yeah, because they don't talk to me anymore.
Because nobody will play.
But this study posited that people with ADHD generally know that they're different and that they do something wrong, but they don't know what they did wrong because the difficulties in recognizing social norms and desirable behavior. And consequently, this study theorized that pronounced justice sensitivity is a coping strategy that people with ADHD use to infer the right social behavior.
Oh, that's interesting. Wow.
I love when I surprise you with information. It is for sure my favorite thing.
You're always going to get a good reaction, right?
It's so validating.
Oh, yeah. That's really interesting. That's really fascinating. Because I do sometimes walk away from something and I'm like, it wasn't my best work, but I don't really know what was wrong with it. It just wasn't good. So that makes sense that I'm like not always sure. Something was weird.
Yes.
I did something weird.
Right.
What it is, I don't know, so I'll probably do it again.
So they called this pro-social behavior, which is the willingness to cooperate in common goal-directed activities, adherence to and enforcement of rules, and punishment of deviance. ADHD people can seem like they don't care about social judgment of themselves because they have difficulty recognizing social norms. However, the researchers noted that people with ADHD are comparable to neurotypical people in empathy and the ability to feel guilt and shame, distinguishing ADHD from a conduct disorder.
What would a conduct disorder be?
A conduct disorder refers to a group of behavioral and emotional problems characterized by a disregard for others.
Like a sociopathy type of...
Yes, not caring about social norms of good behavior, ignoring the rights and feelings of others, enjoying causing harm, lying or manipulating people,
Yikes.
committing physical or sexual abuse, and hurting animals. So I think it's more like a sociopathy.
Yeah. So this is like a non-deliberate
Right.
behavior.
Antisocial personality disorder, something like that. So ADHD, we don't have that, guys. Why, how does pro-social behavior tie into justice sensitivity? A sound sense of justice is a prerequisite for pro-social behavior. So
Okay, like to be able to fit in socially,
Correct.
you need to have a sense of what is fair.
Right, because
makes
then
sense.
that influences your moral compass.
Correct, and people are not going to want to be around you when you're a sociopath.
Psychopath. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so the study. The 3 groups were compared. Adults with ADHD divided into 2 groups, inattentive subtype, and then they put hyperactive/impulsive and combined type together because hyperactive type and impulsive type had the same, similar to each other, but were also very different from inattentive type.
Okay.
So, and then they had the neurotypical group as the control group to make.
So they had
the
3 different groups. Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So they set up a game, and basically, they had this whole explanation for it. The link to this is in our show notes, so if you're really interested in seeing how this game played out, by all means, look it up.
And it wasn't rats; it was humans.
It was humans. This was all humans. There were no rats. And these were all males. Yeah.
Yeah.
But regardless.
No offense, man. I guess.
Whatever.
I mean.
And this was also done in the EU, this study.
Okay.
But the game is sort of like Monopoly. They had, and it's like each time, there are 4 rounds that they played, and each time there are 4 people playing, and each round that they played, your job within the game changed. So there was one person who was in charge of handing out the money to everybody, like the tickets it was all in tickets. So like if you're handing out the Monopoly money to everybody, you could decide who got the most money when you were in a certain role.
Okay.
And the fourth person was sitting out each time. So as you rotated through the positions.
One person was out, 3 people were in with different jobs.
Correct.
Okay.
They also included in the study descriptions of the people who had the most power, because...
So there was a hierarchy also to the positions.
Correct. Okay. And they described the more powerful people in kind of like stereotypical socioeconomic terms. So the more powerful people were attractive and athletic, and they came from established families. That kind of thing.
The people that everybody loves to hang out with.
Yeah, all the Chets and Brads of the world. But and also the study participants, you weren't actually playing this game face to face with them. So it was like playing The Sims, but Monopoly.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I know. If you really care about how this game played out, guys, go read the study. I don't know what to tell you. It's not a long paper. It's only 14 pages. So anyway... They set up the game and then manipulated it so the 2 strong players repeatedly treated the weak player unfairly.
Ooh, yep.
And this distinction was made within the game. It wasn't a judgment on the participants themselves, and because it was introduced to make the injustices more obvious to everyone involved, which is why they included that socioeconomic description.
Okay, so they're like kind of upping the ante as
Correct.
time goes on to really...
Kind of like, you ever play Life?
I don't think I did.
Oh, okay.
I'm not good for long, like Monopoly. I would rather have bamboo shoots under.
See, I prefer Life to Monopoly because I feel like it's more of a game of chance. Like you draw a card to find out what your house will be, but your house can be a trailer that got hit by a tornado, or it can be a McMansion.
Oh, Lord.
Like, or anything in between.
Yeah.
So like,
I never played Life. Now I don't think I ever did. Now that I'm thinking about it,
it's not bad. It doesn't actually take that long. I don't know that there was even really money involved with it.
I'm good for card games and short, quick things. Not good for that surgery one where you had to pluck the things out
Operation?
of the... Yeah, and the alarm would go off. Yeah, that I was not good with.
Weird.
That other one with the shapes where you had to fit them in.
Perfection?
Yep. Whoa. Yeah, that's another bad one. Karaoke, not good at. Name that tune, also not good. Jumbles, terrible at those.
You're probably fine at karaoke. It's just the name that tune thing that's a problem. I'm terrible. I can't.
That tune's
But my problem with karaoke is that I can't articulate to the DJ what song I want to sing.
You know that song, and he's like, no.
You know, Billy Joel and the East Street Band.
Tune into Patreon. You know, the Gravy Train song. And this guy's like, I don't get paid enough to be dealing with your bullshit right now, so please go sit down until you figure out what the fuck you're talking about.
So they set up the game, they manipulated it, and then when the study was concluded, all the participants were asked to complete a questionnaire. That resulted in the researchers finding that those in the inattentive ADHD group exhibited higher rates of justice sensitivity, whereas the hyperactive impulsive combined group had similar rates of justice sensitivity as the neurotypical group. Yeah, I was surprised too. This paper also noted that there was no opportunity, like going forward, what they would change or if they were to run the study again. There was no opportunity in their game for, quote, vengeance to be taken by participants against players who had exerted their control to the detriment of others in their game. So they couldn't, like, see if there would be higher rates of ADHD people taking retributive action to rebalance the scales based on their perceived injustices during the game, or what they perceived to be injustices to other players.
Right. So they weren't, like, allowing people to use rocket launchers at each other in this study.
Nope. They didn't. And
weird.
Because the last role that you played was just the observer.
Gotcha.
So
to, like, let you see it play out.
Correct.
And see what's... Okay,
so,
I gotcha.
but then you didn't play after that. So you didn't see it play out and then play through.
So you couldn't act on it.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So they said that, like, that was potentially something to look at in the future with a future study, is to see if that would affect how their opinions of the study would work, perhaps doing a questionnaire in between those rounds to see, like, okay, like quick 3 questions, how are you feeling about how this is doing?
Right.
Between every round, and then as you cycle through the second time, see if they felt better the second time through, because they were like, okay, I get it, that guy's a fucker.
They're like, hey, did you get an emotional high from dunking on Brad? That would be a good...
The answer is yes.
Yes.
So in conclusion, the participants with all ADHD subtypes were more sensitive to social injustice, but they showed reactive behavior when they themselves were the victim of the injustice. That is, they protected themselves from injustice just as, quote, healthy people would do. Neurotypical people.
Rude.
But ADHD people were more permissive and generous with others as well.
Oh, nice.
I know, right?
Yeah.
We're cuties.
Look at us. We're so nice.
So the opposite of a pro-social behavior is an egocentric behavior.
Okay, yep.
Right? So egocentric and pro-social behaviors are not mutually exclusive. The same extent of justice that is claimed for others will be claimed for oneself by somebody with ADHD.
Interesting. So it's not just about yourself, it's also about other people.
Right, which is, I think, probably somewhat more unique to people with ADHD, because we're just looking to be on the same playing field as everybody else.
Yes. And I think there definitely have been times where I'm pointing something out and everybody else is looking at me. It's kind of like that meme that I sent you of the American Girl dolls where she's like, did you know this? And why the fuck would I know that? I'm pointing out, like, is anybody else mad about this? And everybody's like, why the fuck would I be paying attention to that?
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, like, and so then I found this other source that said that ADHDers are found to be more justice sensitive for several reasons. Our brains are both hypersensitive and intuitive, meaning that we feel the world's pain with that same intensity that we feel pain for ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
And it also means that we can pick up on the pain and suffering of others that neurotypical brains are able to gloss over, like you just said.
I thought I was just empathetic.
I mean, you are, but to a fault, evidently. Like you're medically
like a
empathetic.
sponge. Like I lay down as a dry sponge and absorb everything. That's
until
how
it
feels.
leaks out of you.
Yep. And then somebody's like, wow, I need to clean this sponge. It smells gross.
Yeah, this took forever to dry and now it's moldy.
I'm the smelly sponge. Sorry.
My cat loves smelly sponges. She steals them off of my counter. And that's why I don't have any sponges in my house. I have to use a brush to wash my dishes. Not a hairbrush, a dish brush, just to be clear.
Just so that everybody knows.
The other reason is that our brains are also filterless. Holla impulsivity. Meaning that we don't screen out details and information that are not salient to our goals.
Or sounds or...
Yes, part of this is what gives us our super intuitive skills, because our brains make decisions based on much more subtle data than neurotypical brains.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's accurate.
And I think that is what we were talking about earlier, before we started recording about how we're able to kind of think on the fly and problem solve and think outside the box because we are looking at that subtle data.
And like when something just, sometimes I can't put my finger on it. I'm like, that's not it.
Yes.
Haven't landed on it yet, but that's not it.
Right. But this also means that we have difficulty disregarding even subtle suffering. Some researchers have also theorized that the neurocognitive delay experienced by children and adolescents with ADHD, which we discussed in our first 3 episodes, I think, of how the frontal cortex isn't as developed, or takes longer to develop.
But we have real intense amygdalas.
Right.
Yep.
So that neurocognitive delay experienced by children and adolescents with ADHD compared to their peers contributes to this justice sensitivity, because children with ADHD may be as many as 2 to 3 years behind their peers in terms of brain development capacity, making it harder to understand complex social interactions and complex rules.
What, 2 to 3 years?
As a result, ADHDers are prone to latch on to one rule and might overgeneralize it and not grasp the subtle intricacies that make rules apply in some situations but not others. This creates a brain that is more comfortable in extremes, making the ADHD brain more likely to see black and white injustices, whereas neurotypical brains are able to better operate in the shades of gray.
Well, I think I just need to go to bed now.
Garrett died.
Yes. Yep.
Sorry.
I immediately passed away. That,
Wild, right?
yeah, you're gonna have to send that to me because I feel like I'm also gonna have to read it and hurt my feelings a second time, so I'm just gonna schedule that for later today.
Okay. What if I just forward that to your therapist for you? And she'll
What if we just skip
bring
the
it up when
middleman?
you're in a safe space.
We'll just skip the middleman. Send it right to a professional. Ooh, 2 to 3 years? That's a lot. That's significant.
But the whole thing with like seeing black and white and
Yeah.
and applying those rules like the way they are, like PK makes fun of me all the time. He calls me a narc because
Oh, wait,
I'm like,
time out.
oh
We
yeah,
need to explain PK. We've gone this whole episode. This is the first time we mentioned him, and I was like,
it wasn't on the board.
nope, it wasn't on the board. I forgot it on the board. Damn it.
So we have gotten questions about what is a PK, who is a PK,
It's a PK. Oh, I love it.
why is a PK. PK is
When is a PK?
Yeah, when is a PK? PK is my boyfriend. This comes out October 13th, so we've been together for going on a year and a half. And yeah, he's my boyfriend. His name is Patrick Kennedy. His initials in my phone when we first started chatting were PK, and when I would send screenshots to Garrett of our conversations, because, you know, that's what women do, and I'm sorry if that's news to you.
Especially when you're first dating somebody.
Yeah, I
That's
gotta
like
make
when
sure
all
that
the
it's like a
screenshots
normal
get sent.
thing. Yeah.
Right.
So, it's totally normal.
Back on. Justice sensitivity. Was it sensitivity?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just making sure.
But yeah, so PK is my boyfriend. We use PK, Peaky, and Patrick interchangeably. I did check with him if he wanted us to stop using his name, and he does not care. So
There is consent. Can you, while we're discussing Peaky and screenshots, talk about when you sent the screenshot to the wrong person? Because that's a very ADHD thing to do. So it's on topic.
we already discussed that.
Did we?
Previous episode, yeah.
Oh, shit. Well, never mind. Everybody's heard it then.
It's either in episode 6 or episode 7, but
Oh,
it's
well.
discussed. But yes, call back to
Call
when
back to when
I
Katie did that.
sent PK a screenshot of his own conversation with me instead of sending it to Garrett because I was so excited.
Could have been worse. You could have sent it with like a caption about.
That's true. Yeah, no, there could have been like, can you believe this fucker? No, that's not what happened.
worse, yeah.
It was just me being the little girl in the GIF with the cotton candy spazzing out.
And he's also very good natured, so there's no better person that you could have sent the wrong screenshot to.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. It probably would have sent me into a spiral because I'd be like,
Oh no, I spiraled because he was also at work at the time, so he couldn't like
respond immediately.
like he responded, but it was a very short response.
Oh God,
yeah,
that's worse. That's worse somehow than when we started dating. This the day after our first date. I was waiting for him to text me. I don't know if he texted me first or if I texted him. He didn't respond for like 12 hours because his phone had died while he was at work and he was just busy and just like hadn't gotten to charge it. I went into a full tailspin. I was like, I thought we had a great time. I thought we really clicked. We were making out in my car and now he's not answering me. What is going on? Like freaking out. To which he responded with, because I think I even said to him, like, are we okay?
But that comes through as a green bubble, and you're like, oh my God, he blocked me.
Yeah, he was like, my phone died. I was like, okay.
Well, going forward, I'm going to need you to not let that happen again.
Yeah, you're just going to have to give a charge and respond to me when I'm feeling insecure.
If I have to get you one of those fucking brick of a phone cases that has an extra battery in it.
I'm going to find out in over 10 years that I have rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and this is going to make more sense, but right now I'm upset. Feeling insecure and I don't like it. My body's on fire.
It's not going to change how upset I am. It's just gives you context for how to deal with it.
It just gives you more clarity that yes, I am a tortellini filled with knives. You're correct.
Wee. And then also the fourth thing for why ADHDers might have justice sensitivity issues is that a history of personal injustice can make our brains even more sensitive to injustice. So every time that you're misunderstood or you're made to follow rules that you don't understand, singled out for talking too loudly or fidgeting, it triggers that injustice sensitivity because it doesn't feel fair to you.
Oh.
So you're overdeveloping your perception of fairness to, you have that amygdala response, but it's also such an emotional response because you don't understand why you're getting picked on by the teacher or somebody in authority position or somebody that you're supposed to respect.
A boss or like whoever this other, it's that quote about the RSD every time feels like the first time I was rejected as a child. Like it's going to bring you right back to that same wound when you're feeling it.
Totally. So why is justice sensitivity and RSD so draining? Or why are justice sensitivity and RSD so draining?
That for what is a PK?
Why use big word when little word do trick?
That's a good one.
I've got compassion fatigue because we are super empathetic.
Yes.
We can hit full capacity way faster. So, and because our brains don't differentiate between empathetic pain and personally experienced pain, it triggers the same neurological and physiological response in our bodies, which leaves little to no bandwidth left to deal with like those everyday things.
Yeah,
like
accurate.
Waiting in line or whatever.
Yep. Yes.
Which is why you've got to limit your doom scrolling because it fills up the space you have in your empathy glass too fast.
And also in social media, things like Facebook, they intentionally will fill your feed with depressing, upsetting, hurtful, inflammatory things so that you keep using it. Mm-hmm. And it creates this like addictive component, which people with ADHD are already susceptible to. Yes.
I saw something that described Twitter, I think, as a dopamine slot machine or dopamine like a dopamine like gumball machine, I think what it was. Mm-hmm. So like every time you log in, you get that gumball out of dopamine, good or bad, like
notification, just the notification pop up, or
so and so liked your photo, or so and so liked your story.
It's an immediate hit of dopamine to your brain, which is crazy. Yeah, it's crazy that it really is like when we were talking about that study that they did with the rats where it was like the delayed reward and they were pushing the button and they'd have to wait X number of seconds before they got the kibble bits. This is like immediate kibble bits. It's like you're pushing it, kibble.
And at a certain point, waiting for that kibble bits is even though you're getting a bunch of kibble bits after the wait, is irrelevant. You'll just go for the instant kibble bits. So you switch between apps and, that's why you have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok.
Yep. Does anybody want to puke on themselves right now? Because I do.
The other reason that it's so draining is the rumination thing that we were discussing earlier. We have such an emotional reaction to perceived or actual injustice. Your, quote, default mode network, the network in your brain responsible for rumination and non-task directed thought, doesn't turn off when its counterpart, the task positive network, turns on, meaning that even when we're being, quote, productive, unquote, our emotional center is still draining us. So now we're double tired by the end of the day.
Oh, man. Speaking of double tired at the end of the day, wow. This is a lot. I don't want to say I was arrogant going into the ADHD coverage. I definitely had a thought of like, I know what I'm dealing with. We can cover this. My mind has been blown, I don't even know how many times, where I'm like, oh, that thing about myself that I've never been able to put my finger on, but I can't stop myself from doing. It sounds like it has a name and a cause. That's wild. Okay, so now I'm sorry to continue. Yeah.
So we're almost at an hour or just over an hour for this episode, so I think we should cut it.
Probably.
Yeah, cut this into 2 episodes. So come back next week and we'll take a quiz and see how much RSD we have.
How much? A lot.
And
it's almost like 2 people trying to get through a plan with ADHD go off the rails.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll cut it here so that we're not keeping you guys all here for extra hours
and laughing at ourselves for hours.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll be here next Thursday with a brand new episode to delight your brain juices. In the meantime, the best way to support us is to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast streaming platform. You can keep up with us during the week on Instagram and Facebook at The Bar is Ankle High and on Twitter at Ankle High Pod. If you want even more Ankle High hot takes in your life and have a few dollars to spare, consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/thebarisAnkleHigh. We post bonus episodes there full of our karaoke attempts, Am I the Asshole discussions, and wondering how we even managed to survive this long. Patreon subscribers also get exclusive access to our secret Patreon-only Facebook group and get added to our close friends list on Instagram. Until next week, remember to be kind to yourself because the bar is ankle high.